Now, the word inflammation actually comes from the Greek word that means on fire. That's flame, right? We all know that. And so when we think about inflammation, it's very obvious, right? When we go hiking, we got bitten by a bee, a hornet, and then there's some swelling. That's because the poison from the hornet gets in the body. The body wants to fight that poison, sends out all kinds of healing agent, including the white blood cell, and then you get a little bit of swelling, a little bit of unpleasantness, and we call that inflammation, right? Okay, now there's another kind of inflammation. When we get attacked by a virus, we catch a cold, and we have some inflammation, infections in the lung, same thing, right? Now, of course, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is something that is actually more unique to the modern people, starting probably when I was a little kid, the last 60 years or so. When we start living in the modern society, everything get more modernized, more convenient, okay? And now we start to have chronic inflammation. So, for example, I talk a great deal about my dad who suffered from dementia. That's inflammation. That's actually inflammation in the brain. I talk about him also having diabetes. I myself is pre-diabetic. That's inflammation. My friend who suffered from a heart attack maybe a month, 2 months ago, and I talk about how that is related to cholesterol, and except that cholesterol is not the evil here. The cholesterol is actually our body of healing inflammation in the blood vessel. And then it turns out that all the modern diseases that we have today are all due to inflammation. So we talk about how changing a diet would help, right? Consuming the right kind of oil, not the seed oil, usually marketed as vegetable oil, which has something to do with vegetable. They're just seed oil. They tend to inflame your body. So we said we prefer olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, oil that are rich in omega-3. We talk about not to eat too much deep fried food, not to eat too much artificial, not any kind of factory sugar, factory manufactured sugar in soft drinks and stuff. We talk all about that. But actually, the greatest source of inflammation is from stress, and we talk a little bit about that. And the reason for that is our natural healer for inflammation is steroid. We know that, right? Because you can inject steroid into your bone when you have arthritis or when you have carpal tunnel. So steroid has a way of reducing inflammation. And the natural steroid that we put out are called cortisol and adrenaline. Both of them are steroid. And we talk about how it's important to have cortisol, right? Because your body needs it. If a bus is rushing your way, the only way you can get out of the way is to jump, and the only way you can jump is this cortisol comes out, and it changes your body state, turns off all the things that you don't need, right? So we talk about how after we do an exercise, we then need to come back to the restorative, let the body rest, dissipate all the cortisol and return back to the normal state. Now it turns out that when someone who is under stress all the time, like most of us, right? Most of us have this bad habit of using an iPhone all the way until we sleep. Sometimes we don't even sleep well. We are overwhelmed by cortisol, and now you develop cortisol resistance. So the natural steroid that you can put out is no longer effective, and so now your body starts to inflame, and all these long-term diseases start to develop. And of course, with COVID, that's another major inflammation. And then what happened is that someone who had these chronic disease, their body is overtaxed already, and so when you have more external agent, they can't survive. Most of them cannot survive, right? So we all know about what's happening in China, and we read newspaper and watch TV and all that, and a lot of that is put out by people who might have a political agenda, so I tend not to believe it in 100%. Except I'm down here in Los Angeles visiting my my Chinese doctor, my Chinese medicine doctor. And so after the treatment, the acupuncture treatment, mostly on my shoulder, and we had some chat. And it turns out that he's really working full time. A lot of his colleagues back in Canton, in China, when he was a doctor, were suffering from COVID. And the biggest problem is that there's a run on medicine, both Chinese and Western medicine. So people are dying of really unnecessary death. It's really a big problem right now. Anyway, coming back to here, and so we're all here because we want good health. And I think we need to focus on this, that how do we reduce inflammation, chronic inflammation in the body by learning how to meditate, learning how to entice our body into the rest and digest mode, right? Giving it a chance to really dissipate the cortisol, restoring the sensitivity cortisol, let the cortisol be the healing agent again. We need to really watch our diet. We need to do the right and all that, right? Now, the exercise that we do, and most of you has been with me now for over a year, so you hear me talk about the exercise that we do here and how it's based on a very, very different concept, that our health is not on these individual organs, but rather on a system of energy that are flowing through our body that we call qi, right? And we talk about the qi actually has two parts. It has the shi, and then it has the qi. The shi is the blood, is the circulation. It's like the electricities, and then the qi is like the magnetism that associate with the electricities. And we talk about how important it is to have this qi flowing through our body, and we talk about how that is the beginning of a good health. And so we spend a lot of time doing the right kind of exercise, focusing on the shoulder, focusing on the neck, focusing on the back. We talk about how those are the yang energy facing the sun. We then, do a lot of petting. We do a lot of acupressure and all that. Now, what I want to talk about here today a little bit is to go back to this word qi. Now, most of the characters that you see, the character that you see for qi comes in two parts. One part is the air. The other part, it means the rice. It's basically symbolic of grains. So it has to do with the air that you breathe as well as the food that you consume. Right? That's the internal qi, and then by that it influences the external qi. That's actually a very modern way of writing the word qi. Now it turns out that the very ancient word of writing qi is very different from that, and it has one character on top. And then it has 4 dots on the bottom. Now the 4 dots is actually means fire. It means fire. And the word on top means no. So qi means no fire. So in fact, the qi exercise that we do here is to reduce inflammation. Because the Chinese believed that if you have proper qi, in other words, if you have energy flowing through your body unhindered, then your chance of getting inflammation is very low, and therefore you would have very little chance of having sickness. And when your qi is blocked, then you should start to develop inflammation in your body. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about today: is the relationship between the modern day illness, all of which have one thing in common, which is called inflammation, whether it's dementia, cancer, I forgot to mention that, diabetes, heart attack, and a whole bunch of illness that we are confronted with. They all have to do with chronic inflammation, and inflammation is the Latin word or the Greek word, I don't remember, that means on fire. It turns out that that is exactly the same as what we talk about here when we talk about qi, and it means no fire. All the exercise that we do here is to reduce inflammation, and which kind of brings back to so how do you do that? Well, not just by your lifestyle, not just by the food that you consume, but also by doing meditation and the right kind of exercise to get your body into the the parasympathetic, right? The rest and digest. Okay.